Welcome to Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu. I'm delighted to have as my guest today Gary Locke, former governor of Washington State. Governor, thanks for
Pleasure to be with you, Eric.
Well, Governor, I just want to start. I mean, everybody knows about your bio and your path in public life, and maybe people don't know just exactly what you're doing these days. You're at the law firm of Davis, Wright, and Tremaine. Tell me about what is on your plate there and what your days are like.
Well, my days are very, very busy, and I'm not really practicing law exclusively, but really involved in a lot of civic and nonprofit work as well. But at the law firm, I'm co-chair of the China practice.
Welcome to Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu. I'm thrilled to have as my guest today Gary Locke, the former governor of Washington State. Governor, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, Eric.
Governor, tell me what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm at the law firm of Davis, Wright, Tremaine, which is one of the oldest, most respected law firms in the state of Washington. But it's actually a nationally, or it's a law firm with offices throughout the United States in New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Anchorage, and Shanghai. Wow. And I am co-chair of the China practice, and what I do is really to help U.S. and international companies navigate China, get government approvals in China to grow and expand, to sell their products and services, such as environmental technology, architecture, engineering, alternative energy, medical devices. I think it's a perfect match to help sell products and services of the United States and the Western countries into China, creating jobs for us here at home, while helping meet the needs of China in terms of cleaning up their environment and becoming more energy efficient, or even modernizing their banking system. It's a win-win for the people of China, but creating jobs for here at home.
You said you're helping these clients navigate China. What does it mean to navigate China?
Well, sometimes, the Chinese bureaucracy can be very complex, and so it can mean expediting their applications or introducing them to the top government officials, briefing the government officials on the projects that the U.S. companies want to do, and urging the Chinese to be flexible, even if it doesn't quite meet the letter of the law or the regulations, because oftentimes, it's hard to understand the legal system and the laws of China, and sometimes we have these great projects that are beneficial to China, cleaning up the environment, cleaning up environmental superfunds, and at the same time creating jobs for Americans.
Now, when you were governor, first Chinese-American governor in the United States, and you took a trip, more than one trip back to China, and were celebrated there as a hero. So you have a very unique perspective on the way the two countries see one another. But I'm curious, now that you're enmeshed in this work of really building these bridges in a very direct way for different private sector entities, do you think that the ways that America and China see each other are misguided, are unfocused, are not, matching reality? Do you see a new picture now of how these two countries are relating?
I still think there's a great deal of misunderstanding and stereotyping of each other across the ocean. And I think that the only way to dispel those myths, to really have a better appreciation of the complexity, the values of America, our values for freedom, openness, transparency, public participation, the electoral system, and for the Americans to understand that China is so complex. I mean, it's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and when you have a city of 10, 15, 20 million people, it's very difficult to modernize that city, to provide modern telecommunications, sewage, clean water systems, or even transportation. And that both sides have to have a better appreciation of the culture, the challenges, the history, the political mindset of each other. And that can only occur through greater exchanges, more Americans going to China and seeing firsthand the vastness, the enormity of the challenges of China. And Chinese coming to the United States, understanding how our political system, our openness, our democracy, our protection of dissent and criticism of the government, in fact, fosters innovation and creativity and is really the strength of America.
When you take that particular piece of the message about our capacity for openness and disagreement as being core to our capacity for innovation and creativity, how receptive an audience do you get for that message in China, in different parts of China?
Well, I think they're beginning to understand that themselves as they try to innovate and with technology, as they try to change the education system of China from simply memorization to creative thinking and critical thinking. They understand that American model may in fact be the right way to go.
I mean, as governor, you spent a fair amount of your mental energy on education issues. Do you feel like looking at their education system, and granted it's vast and complex, and ours, that what are the kinds of things that you feel like we could learn from them, if you're talking about they could learn from us some elements of creativity?
Well, I think one of the things that we can learn from not only China, but so many other countries, whether it's in Europe or other parts of Asia, is that we can have higher standards for our kids at a very early age. We can have higher and greater expectations of them at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years old. And our kids can meet those expectations. We don't want to be regimented about it, and we certainly don't want to do what some of the Chinese have or do, which is boarding school kindergartens, where kids drop them off at kindergarten on a Monday morning and pick them up on a Friday afternoon. I think that's a little bit too regimented for us and too focused on education. But to expect our kids to be able to do simple math, to know the alphabet by the time they go to kindergarten, to be able to dance or engage in art projects or learn to play an instrument. Not that they have to be, great musicians or concert pianists, but we can have those expectations at an earlier age. And we'd be surprised how well our kids would do. So I think that's one of the lessons that we can learn from other countries, including China.
Have there been times, as you've been doing this work of building these bridges and opening each country's eyes to the other, that it has felt uncomfortable to you at all to be the kind of messenger to either side?
Well, I don't think so. First of all, I'm very proud of my Chinese heritage and culture, but I'm an American through and through, born and raised in Seattle. Didn't speak English until I went to kindergarten, but I pretty much lost all the Chinese language skills. But I can see where we can benefit from each other. And on so many issues, cooperation is so critical, both to the interests of the United States and to China. I mean, China and the United States have long been partners. They were allied during World War II. They have been fighting together to try to stop world terrorism. They are aligned together in trying to stop North Korea from developing and furthering a nuclear arsenal. So in so many ways, our interests are aligned. And China is a glorious civilization, thousands of years old. The Chinese invented the clock, the printing press, the compass, abacus, so many other great inventions. But America, too, is innovating, pioneering the internet and technology. And those creations of medical technology, information technology, financial services, alternative energy, badly needed in China. Mm-hmm. And that's where I see a win-win.
Mm-hmm. When you were describing your work, and you run the China practice at Davis Wright Tremaine, but a good chunk of your time as well now is on civic endeavors all across the board, statewide, national. Tell me what else is on your plate in terms of your civic activities.
So many other things. I mean, I'm involved in the boards of several nonprofits. One of my big passions right now is trying to increase getting more people on the National Bone Marrow Registry.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
As governor, I came across so many families who were seeking a bone marrow transplant for their young child, and oftentimes these were children of mixed marriages, Asian and Caucasian. And we don't have enough people of color who are signed up to be on the National Bone Marrow Registry. We don't have enough people of color regularly giving blood. Now, obviously, you know, if someone's in a car crash and needs a transfusion or needs some blood at Harborview Hospital, you know, if you're O positive, you're O positive. But for a lot of people that need constant transfusions because of their illnesses or diseases or because they're waiting for an organ transplant, over time, the body is not going to be as receptive to blood simply because it's O positive unless the blood that's being received more closely matches, is a more perfect match to the blood of that particular individual. I remember when I was governor a few years before I left office, I got a phone call from the blood bank saying, Gary, we need your blood. Someone is undergoing an organ transplant, has had a lot of transfusions. That person needs actually your blood. And from the entire database, they felt that my blood more closely matched the characteristics of this person's blood. So I went and gave a unit of blood for that person. We need to encourage more people to give blood, and at the same time to sign up to be on the National Bone Marrow Registry. We also need to start working with our hospitals to store the umbilical cord blood of babies that are delivered instead of just throwing it away as medical waste. Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, on whose board I serve, has really pioneered how to expand and almost further that small amount of umbilical cord blood, which is very rich and actually does not have to be as perfect a match as bone marrow in terms of helping people with cancer.
How did you get into this this particular cause? Was it solely from the experience you'd had as governor, or has there been something in recent years that's made you feel like this is a high priority that you need to focus on?
Well, primarily from all those instances when I was governor, approached by people to help publicize the need for blood for their children. And also a Seattle police officer actually called me up, and he it had been determined that he was a match for a person who needed bone marrow, and he was going to take time off to do that, and actually applied for sick leave. It was approved all the way through the chain of command, but then the one of the personnel boards in the city of Seattle reversed that and said that you're not sick, and so you're either going to have to take personal vacation time or leave without pay in order to donate your bone marrow for a kid in California. He decided he was going to do it anyway. But he asked me to help him on his case, and as I researched it, I remembered that at King County, when I was county executive, I signed an ordinance granting county employees time off with pay if they were donating an organ, giving blood, or bone marrow. And one of the sponsors of that ordinance, co-sponsors of that ordinance, was none other than now Mayor Greg Nichols. So I called the city council, called the mayor's office, and said, hey, we did this at the county. You at the city should develop a policy to allow people time off with pay for a life-saving procedure. And then I checked into our state, and it was ambiguous, so I issued an executive order saying, by golly, state employees will be able to do this, no questions asked, time off with pay to give these to give organs and engage in life-saving procedures. And then from that, we ramped up our blood drives and bone marrow drives in the state of Washington. So I've been involved in this issue and focusing on this issue for quite some time now.
Well, you know, your involvement in this campaign for bone marrow for the registry is indicative of, I think, a larger thing, which is that you are a private citizen now, but you're not just any private citizen. You're someone who's still able to make a lot of things happen and create a lot of leverage. And I'm just wondering, as you are putting together this new hybrid life, partly private sector is still incredibly engaged in civic affairs in different ways, what feels most different to you when you compare this time of your life to the 8 years you spent in Olympia as governor?
Well, I get to pick and choose the causes that I spend my time on. When you're governor, you're so consumed with just running the state and the key priorities and the key issues facing the state, legislatures in session, droughts, fish, water, health care, education. And now I'm able to really focus on partnerships with public and private entities to really try to mobilize people together who really care about these issues and then try to bring people in from other states.
What do you miss, and what are you so glad to not have anymore in your life?
I miss the debates on policy. We had a really great group of people on the staff in Olympia, the departments, the legislature, and citizen groups talking about these issues and trying to make progress. And of course, when I served as governor, we always had tough financial times. But despite those tough financial times, or having the legislature controlled by the opposition party, in this case the Republicans, it was oftentimes difficult to do as much as we would have liked to have done. But given the hand that was dealt, or the cards that were dealt us, I'm very proud of what we were able to do. Government efficiency, using the internet to make services available so that you don't even have to stand in line. So I'm really proud of all those things. I don't miss the daily grind of Olympia, and we love being back in Seattle. Mom and Dad are here. They're getting on in years, and so we really try to spend as much time with them as possible. And then going to Dylan's soccer games and watching Emily in her swim meets and her musical performances. It's much more relaxed. I think Mona will say that I'm lighter now. I'm not as serious, because before, if it rained, I was always fretting, are we going to have floods? And if it wasn't raining, I'd be fretting, are we having a drought and forest fires and not enough water for fish and farms and communities? So, I could never be satisfied with the weather.
Yeah, I don't think people have an appreciation of how much just baseline background stress there is when you're in governor, where any little thing, the rain, the sun, is going to ripple out in some way to some decision you're going to have to make, right? What about the idea for you? I mean, you've always been, even during your time as governor, pretty accessible and down to earth, and now certainly as a private citizen. You were talking about coming over here to the studio. You were taking the bus and running to catch the last bus before the door closed and all that. Do you feel like in your role now as sort of, again, super private citizen, not just an anonymous citizen, but somebody who's out there, and yet somebody who is really just trying to make your way in a regular way? What's the balance you try to strike between living a quote-unquote totally normal, maybe even anonymous life, and still wanting to have visibility and leverage and be able to make things? How do you keep that balance? Because it's not all about wanting to retreat and go home and hide at home. You're still out in the world. How do you strike that?
It is a tough balance, and first of all, our priority is to our kids. When I was governor, we had limits on how many nights away I would be from the kids. No more than 2 nights a week. And no more than one weekend or 2 weekends a month would we be engaged in political or gubernatorial functions, so that we'd have time to spend with the kids. Because you can go to banquets every single night, and 15 years from now, are you going to remember those banquets? Or are you going to remember when your daughter had her first ballet recital, or her first piano recital, or the first soccer game or Little League game? So we still do have those limits now. And still, I love mowing the lawn. I insist on mowing my own lawn, raking the leaves, and driving the kids around. So we really try to keep as normal a life as possible. But I still am very committed to our community. We have a lot of big issues facing our state and the Puget Sound region, whether it's the Alaskan Way Viaduct to increasing educational achievement and academic achievement within the schools of the state, and particularly the Seattle Public Schools where our kids go to school. So it is a balance. And now I'm also working on some national issues. One of the co-chairs for Hillary Clinton's campaign for presidency in the state of Washington. And also I'm forming along with former Secretary of Commerce and before that Congressman Norm Mineta, he and I are forming a national political organization to really help elect progressive candidates, but also to turn out the votes among people of color, communities of color.
This is called America's Opportunity Fund.
Opportunity Fund. Our first goal is to help elect progressive candidates at the federal level who are in key, tough races, not people who are going to win with a landslide, but in tough races, but pivotal races, provided they have a sensitivity to and understanding of communities of color. And then the second part is to really make sure that people of color turn out to vote in these federal races. And then third, to help identify up-and-coming political leaders within the communities of color, to encourage them to run for statewide office or federal office, to give them some publicity if they're a city council member or a school board member or member of the state legislature.
You know, that is it goes straight to the next question I was going to ask you, which is, you have been shaped, and you've been very vocal about it all during your career, about the many people who have been shaping and forming and mentoring you along the way, whether it's a Ruth Wu or other folks like that. And now, with something like America's Opportunity Fund, you're trying to find ways to to pass that on. Do you feel like, as you think about not just creating a PAC, a political organization like that, but your relationship with any given individual candidate for office or person who's thinking about getting involved in politics, what do you feel like what advice would you give that person now, knowing what you know about having served in public office and been in such a high visibility role? Is there anything that you'd say to them that maybe you wish somebody had said to you when you were getting started in politics?
Well, I've never believed in planning or plotting a political career, and so much of what happens is by chance or luck and being in the right place at the right time. So I guess it would be to make sure that you're always touching bases with your constituencies and the people that have helped you, having little like kitchen cabinets and coffee meetings all around your district or your jurisdiction. That's in fact what President Clinton told me even before we were elected. We were on a bus ride tour. I think this was like late September, early October, the year that I was running for election. I just won the primary. And he talked about how he actually lost re-election the first time that he ran for re-election as governor of Arkansas. And he realized that his success ultimately depended on just touching bases with all the different groups and friends and small little political organizations all around the state. And so that was a really good piece of advice. And even now I'm still talking to people and just, hey, Frank, how are you doing? Joe or Lois, how are things going? And we just keep in touch. And that's one of the most gratifying parts of my job as governor, was going around the state, meeting people and getting to know people and really understanding and appreciating the incredible diversity of communities and lifestyles, from Odessa, Washington to Forks, Washington to Walla Walla and the big cities of Seattle and Spokane and Tacoma. So that was really something that I very much cherish.
You said a moment ago that your wife has observed that you're lighter now. And first of all, I want to hear a little bit more about what that means. Like, what does it mean for you to have more lightness in your life? But secondly, how else do you feel like in these years post Olympia, do you feel like you are changing?
Well, I don't think my core values have in any way changed. There's just a little bit more free time, a little bit more unstructured time. You're not programmed. Although sometimes I feel like with that lack of structured time, the free time, I'm wasting it. I'm not as efficient. I should clean my office. I got to go home and clean that garage and really, straighten out that garage and organize it or things like that. But there's just more time just for reflection and just hey, maybe I'll go to the driving range and just go hit some golf balls or something like that. I'm a terrible golfer, but you're still addicted to it. Just going out for lunch. When I was governor, most of the time I just, if I wasn't on the road or in a meeting, I just have a cup of soup at my desk. I still tend to do that now, but sometimes I'll just call people up and say, hey, you free for lunch? Let's go out. So, but Mona was always saying that I'm so serious and not joking enough, and just like I said, I was always fretting about something. The weather was either too wet or too dry.
The one of the things that is interesting about many people who make that transition from public office into private citizenship is that it can be really hard for them. And you seem to have been navigating that quite with a lot of aplomb and balance. And I'm wondering, for you, do you think about this phase or act of your life as a phase, as an act? Do you think, okay, I'm going to spend X chunk of years doing what I'm doing now, this hybrid of private and public work and U.S. and China and other things? Or do you see this really as the rest of your life going forward? Do you envision being back in public office and in politics?
I have absolutely no idea what the future holds. I mean, I can't imagine running for elected office again and ramping up a huge campaign organization. And a lot of our supporters and friends are now scattered about and working for different companies and helping other candidates or working in the offices of other elected officials. It was a great privilege, incredible honor. Being in office, whether state legislature, county executive, and then governor. Have great memories. But I have no idea what the future holds. I mean, a lot of it depends on...
Is that scary or is that exciting?
Well, see, I've never believed in planning or plotting a future. I mean, things just happen, and you just got to be in the right place at the right time, prepared. If opportunities present themselves. But there are some people who say, I'm going to be president of the United States, or I'm going to be United States Senator by the age of X. Right. And I'm going to do this first, and then this second, and that third in order to get there. I just don't do that. You know, a lot of it depends on what Mona's doing. I mean, she's now the head of a nonprofit organization, loves it. Susan G. Komen Foundation of Puget Sound, the Race for the Cure, or Susan G. Komen for the Cure. And it also depends on what our kids are doing. I mean, Emily is 10 and a half, Dylan is 8 and a half, and Madeline just turned 3, and depends on what their interests are and how they're doing in school. And then parents are getting elderly and getting more frail, and so we're spending a lot of time with them. So you just never know what the future holds, but just take it a step at a time.
When you think about now, you mentioned being in Seattle allows you to be close. I mean, not only spend more time with your kids, of course, but to be close to your folks and your parents. How much, when you are going back to China, are you able to involve and fold in either your parents or your children into now all this great cross-cultural, cross-Pacific work you're doing?
Well, certainly it gives them a greater appreciation of China. And a year ago, October, our entire family, mom and dad, brothers and sisters, their spouses, Mona, myself, and some of the cousins and aunts and uncles, we all went back to the family village in China to see the family village again. And you know, my dad's 90. That probably was his last trip to China. But they were so energized, and it's like a complete reversal of their health conditions and a miraculous recovery. And they were able to see things that they had not seen before in China themselves, because we went to the terracotta soldiers in Xi'an and some of the incredible landscape areas and the canyons of China. But that was a real treat. We were not able to bring Emily and Dylan, and I think for them, maybe for Emily, she would have appreciated, but at that time she was about 9 years old. But we do plan to have the kids go to China. They have been to China before. Incredible troopers, incredible travelers, much better than any of the adults. But it's important for them to understand their heritage and their culture, and also understand how fortunate they are to be an American and to live in this great land of America.
Well, Governor, I think anybody watching knows how fortunate we are in the state that you're still as engaged as you are in public life, and so centered and grounded in where you've come from and where you want your children to go. And just personally, I want to say thank you for
thank you
for all you do.
Thank you.
My guest today has been Gary Locke, the former governor of Washington State, and still just an incredibly vocal, visible civic activist and leader in our state, in our country. You've been watching Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu. Thanks for tuning in, and join us again.